I would rather lose $4 billion than marry another liar. The words echoed through the silent conference room only 3 months before everything fell apart. At the time, nobody understood what Ava Brooks meant. The lawyers exchanged confused glances. The executives sitting around the polished walnut table looked uncomfortable. Even her father, one of the most powerful business leaders in America, stared at her as if she had just spoken a foreign language. But Ava meant every word. At 29 years old, she was the sole heir to Brooks Holdings, a company worth more than $4 billion. She lived in a penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago, traveled on private jets, and appeared on magazine covers beside celebrities and politicians. From the outside, her life looked perfect. Yet the truth was something very different. Ava had spent most of her adult life wondering whether anyone actually saw her. Men certainly noticed her. They noticed her beauty. They noticed her family name. They noticed the fortune waiting behind her smile. But nobody seemed interested in the woman herself. 3 weeks earlier, she had discovered the worst betrayal of her life. Her fiancé, Daniel Mercer, had been everything she thought she wanted. Charming, successful, intelligent. The kind of man people immediately trusted. For nearly 2 years, he had convinced her that he loved her. Then one accidental phone call changed everything. Ava had entered Daniel's office unexpectedly and overheard a conversation he never intended her to hear. "Once the marriage is finalized, everything changes," he had said. "The Brooks shares alone are worth more than I could earn in 10 lifetimes." Ava remembered the exact moment her heart seemed to stop. She had stood frozen outside the door, listening as the man she planned to marry discussed her inheritance like a business acquisition. The relationship ended that same night. Daniel apologized. He cried. He insisted she misunderstood. None of it mattered. The damage was done. Since then, Ava had struggled to trust anyone. Every compliment felt suspicious. Every romantic gesture felt calculated. Every invitation felt connected to her wealth. One rainy evening, she stood alone beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of her penthouse apartment. Below, thousands of headlights moved through the city like streams of light. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. Another wealthy entrepreneur asking her to dinner. Ava didn't even read it before deleting it. She was exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. She wanted something money could not buy. Something none of her family's billions seemed capable of attracting. Real love. The kind that existed before bank accounts, headlines, and corporate empires entered the conversation. As thunder rolled across the distant skyline, Ava made a decision that would shock everyone who knew her. It was reckless. It was irrational. It was probably the worst idea she had ever had. Yet for the first time in months, it felt right. If wealth prevented people from seeing who she really was, then perhaps the answer was simple. She would remove wealth from the equation entirely. Somewhere beyond the luxury towers and private clubs of Chicago, she believed there was a man capable of loving her without knowing her last name. What Ava Brooks did not realize was that her search for that man was about to cost her everything she thought she understood about trust, identity, and love. The decision sounded insane when Ava finally said it out loud. Her father stared across the breakfast table in complete disbelief. "You want to disappear?" he asked. Ava nodded. Temporarily. The dining room fell silent. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lake Michigan shimmered beneath the morning sun, but neither of them noticed. Her father leaned back slowly. "Ava, thousands of people know who you are." "Not if I stop looking like Ava Brooks," he rubbed his forehead. For years he had watched his daughter struggle with the same problem. Wealth attracted attention, admiration, and opportunity, but it also attracted people with hidden motives. Still, her proposal sounded extreme. "What exactly are you planning?" Ava took a deep breath. I want to live as an ordinary person." Her father laughed once, not because it was funny, but because he could not believe he was hearing it. "You have never been ordinary a single day in your life." That is exactly the problem. The answer came instantly. For a moment he said nothing. Deep down, he understood. Ava continued. "Every man who approaches me already knows the company, the money, the inheritance, the headlines. They never meet me first. They meet the fortune first." Her father looked out the window. The words were difficult to argue with. "How long?" he finally asked. "A few months." "And what happens during those months?" Ava smiled nervously. "I work. I rent a room. I live like everyone else." The conversation lasted nearly 2 hours. Questions became arguments. Arguments became negotiations. Eventually, they reached a compromise. Ava could leave, but only under strict conditions. Private security would monitor her from a distance. She would check in regularly. If anything felt unsafe, she would return immediately. For the first time in weeks, Ava felt hopeful. The following days became a whirlwind of preparation. Expensive dresses disappeared into storage boxes. Designer handbags were replaced with practical second-hand items. Jewelry vanished. Luxury became simplicity. She even cut and restyled her hair. When she finally looked into the mirror, the transformation startled her. The woman staring back no longer resembled the billionaire heiress who appeared in business magazines. She looked ordinary, invisible, free. 3 weeks later, before sunrise, Ava left Chicago without media announcements, social events, or public explanations. Officially, she was taking time away from public responsibilities. Unofficially, she was disappearing. Her destination was a small working-class town nearly 200 miles away, a place where nobody followed financial news and nobody cared about corporate empires. The rented room waiting for her sat above a modest fruit market on the edge of town. The furniture was old, the bed was small, the walls needed paint. Yet when Ava carried her single suitcase inside, she felt something she had not experienced in years. Excitement. This was no longer an experiment. It was real. Standing beside the tiny window overlooking the street below, she watched ordinary people beginning their day. None of them knew her name. None of them knew her net worth. None of them expected anything from her. And somewhere in that unfamiliar town, completely unaware that his life was about to change, a man named Marcus Reed was preparing to walk into her future. The first week taught Ava something no business school, boardroom, or luxury lifestyle ever could. Ordinary life was harder than she imagined. On her first morning working at the fruit market, she arrived before sunrise expecting a simple day. Instead, she spent hours unloading produce, cleaning shelves, organizing displays, and learning prices. By 10 o'clock, her feet hurt. By noon, her back ached. By closing time, she was exhausted. Yet strangely, she felt more accomplished than she had after many corporate meetings. The owner of the market, a cheerful woman named Denise Carter, treated her like everyone else. No special favors. No special treatment. If Ava made a mistake, Denise corrected her. If she worked hard, Denise praised her. It felt refreshingly honest. Over the following days, Ava began learning the rhythm of the town. Every morning, the same customers appeared. Every afternoon, school children stopped by for snacks. Every evening, workers picked up groceries on their way home. For the first time in years, people interacted with her without knowing anything about her wealth. Most did not even know her last name. She was simply Ava, the new employee at the fruit stand. Not every experience was pleasant. One afternoon, a customer became impatient while waiting for change. Another dismissed her questions and spoke to her as if she were invisible. The encounters bothered her at first. Then they opened her eyes. Millions of people dealt with small moments like these every day. As a billionaire heiress, she had rarely experienced them herself. The realization humbled her. 2 weeks passed, then 3. Gradually, she settled into her new routine. The tiny apartment above the market began feeling like home. She learned how to budget expenses. She cooked her own meals. She washed her own clothes. Every task that once seemed insignificant now carried meaning. One Friday evening, after closing the market, Ava sat alone on the front steps watching the sunset. The street glowed orange beneath the fading light. For the first time since leaving Chicago, she wondered whether her plan was actually working. She had escaped the world of wealth and status, but she still had not found what she was searching for. Maybe true love could not be found through a disguise. Maybe she had been foolish to believe otherwise. A familiar voice interrupted her thoughts. "Long day?" Denise asked as she locked the front door. Ava smiled. "A little." Denise sat beside her. "You know, when you first arrived, I thought you would quit within a week." Ava laughed. "That obvious?" "You had city hands." Ava looked confused. Denise grinned. "Now you have working hands." Both women laughed. The conversation drifted to everyday topics until Denise casually mentioned someone from town. "You remind me a little of Marcus Reed." Ava glanced over. "Who is Marcus Reed?" Denise smiled knowingly. "A mechanic who owns a garage across town. Good man, hard worker, stubborn as a mule." Ava chuckled. "That sounds specific." "Trust me, everybody knows Marcus." Then Denise stood and headed home. Ava watched her leave before looking back toward the quiet street. The name meant nothing to her then. Just another resident in a town filled with strangers. What she did not know was that within days, Marcus Reed would walk through the market doors and change the direction of her entire journey. 3 days later, Ava finally met Marcus Reed, and the encounter was nothing like she expected. The morning had started normally. Customers moved through the market carrying grocery lists and coffee cups. Ava was arranging apples near the front entrance when the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up briefly and saw a tall man wearing a gray work shirt with grease stains on the sleeves. He looked like someone who spent long hours working with his hands. Without realizing it, she immediately knew who he was. "Marcus Reed?" she asked before thinking. The man stopped and looked surprised. "That obvious?" Ava smiled. "Maybe." He laughed softly and grabbed a shopping basket. There was nothing dramatic about him. No expensive watch, no designer clothes, no attempt to impress anyone. Yet something about his calm confidence immediately caught her attention. For the next few minutes, he moved through the store collecting groceries, while Ava continued working. Several customers greeted him by name. He greeted every one of them back, not because he had to, because he genuinely seemed to care. Eventually, he approached the register carrying bread, fruit, bottled water, and a few household supplies. Denise happened to be helping another customer, so Ava stepped forward. "Looks like I am checking you out today." Marcus smiled. "I guess you are." As she scanned the items, an elderly customer accidentally dropped a bag near the entrance. Before anyone else reacted, Marcus walked over and helped pick everything up. The woman thanked him repeatedly. He simply smiled and returned to the register, as though helping people was the most normal thing in the world. Ava noticed. The gesture seemed small, but she had spent enough time around wealthy executives to know how rare simple kindness could be. "You own the garage across town?" she asked. "That is what people tell me." She laughed. "Denise mentioned you." Hopefully she did not tell you anything embarrassing. "Mostly that you are stubborn." Marcus groaned dramatically. "That sounds like Denise." Both laughed. The conversation felt effortless, which surprised Ava. Most men she met either tried too hard or talked endlessly about themselves. Marcus did neither. He paid for his groceries, thanked her, and headed toward the door. Then something unexpected happened. Heavy rain suddenly began pounding the parking lot outside. Customers stopped near the windows, watching sheets of water fall from the dark sky. Marcus glanced outside and shook his head. "Looks like I picked the wrong time to shop." Ava looked out as well. The storm was intense. "You might be stuck here for a while." Would not be the first time. For nearly 20 minutes, the rain continued. Customers chatted while waiting for the weather to improve. Ava found herself talking with Marcus the entire time. They discussed the town, favorite restaurants, local events, and funny customer stories. Nothing important. Yet somehow, every minute passed quickly. Finally, the rain began slowing. Marcus picked up his groceries and headed toward the exit. Before leaving, he looked back at Ava. "It was nice meeting you," she smiled. "You too." He nodded once and walked outside. Ava watched him cross the parking lot toward an older pickup truck. Only after he drove away did she realize something strange. For the first time since leaving Chicago, she was actually looking forward to seeing someone again. Over the next several days, Ava found herself noticing the sound of the market door more often than usual. Every time the bell chimed, a small part of her wondered whether Marcus was walking in. She told herself it was curiosity. Nothing more. After all, they had spoken only once. Yet when he returned 3 days later, she immediately felt her mood brighten. Marcus carried a small shopping basket and headed straight toward the produce section. When he noticed her arranging oranges, he smiled. "Looks like the rain finally stopped," Ava laughed. "Only took half the week." The conversation resumed so naturally that it felt as though no time had passed at all. They talked while he shopped. They talked while she worked. Neither seemed eager to end the exchange. Before leaving, Marcus paused near the register. "Have you eaten today?" The question caught her completely off guard. She blinked. "What?" He pointed toward the sandwich she had left untouched behind the counter. "That has been sitting there for 3 hours." Ava looked at the sandwich and then back at him. "You noticed that?" Marcus shrugged. "People work better when they eat." She laughed softly. Of all the questions wealthy men had asked her throughout her life, nobody had ever asked that one. Not what car she drove. Not where she vacationed. Not who she knew. Just whether she had eaten lunch. The simplicity of it stayed with her long after he left. Over the following weeks, Marcus became a regular customer. Sometimes he bought groceries. Sometimes he only stopped in for a bottle of water. Once he came in looking for motor oil before realizing he was standing in a fruit market. That mistake made both of them laugh for nearly 5 minutes. Little by little, their conversations grew longer. Ava learned that Marcus had opened his garage 10 years earlier, with money he saved working double shifts. She learned that he helped coach a youth baseball team on weekends. She learned that he often repaired vehicles for elderly residents at reduced prices, because many could not afford major repairs. None of those facts came from Marcus bragging. She learned them from other people. That impressed her even more. One Saturday afternoon, the market became unusually busy. A delivery arrived late, customers crowded the aisles, and several employees called in sick. Ava barely had time to breathe. By closing time, she felt exhausted. As she carried a heavy crate toward the storage room, the bottom suddenly shifted. Before she could react, someone grabbed the opposite side and steadied it. She looked up. Marcus. "That looked dangerous," he said. Ava laughed with relief. "You always show up at the right moment?" "Only when people are trying to drop produce." Together they carried the crate into storage. The task took less than a minute, but the ease between them felt different now. Comfortable. Familiar. As they walked back toward the front of the store, Marcus glanced at her. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you were just passing through town." Ava smiled. "What changed your mind?" "You stayed." The answer was simple, but it lingered in her thoughts. Because the truth was, She had stayed. And for the first time since leaving Chicago, she was beginning to wonder whether she had stayed for more than just her original plan. Summer gradually settled over the town, and before either of them realized it, spending time together had become part of their routine. Some afternoons, Marcus stopped by the market after work. Other evenings, they walked through town talking about everything and nothing. The more time Ava spent with him, the more she found herself lowering the walls she had spent years building. One evening, after closing the market, she stepped outside and discovered Marcus waiting beside his truck. "I was starting to think you forgot about me," he joked. Ava smiled. "I was working." "Terrible excuse." She laughed and climbed into the passenger seat. Marcus drove toward a hill overlooking the town. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of gold and orange. They sat on the tailgate of the truck, sharing sandwiches from a local diner. It was one of the simplest evenings Ava had experienced in years, yet she could not remember the last time she had enjoyed herself so much. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Depends on the question. What were you doing before you moved here?" Ava felt her heart skip. The question was innocent, but the answer was complicated. For a moment, she considered telling him everything: the company, the fortune, the life she had left behind. Instead, she chose the safest truth available. "I needed a fresh start." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that." She looked at him. "You do?" He smiled faintly. "A few years ago, I almost sold the garage." That surprised her. "Why?" "Because I was tired. The hours, the stress, the pressure." He looked toward the horizon. "Sometimes people think success makes life easier. Sometimes it just gives you different problems." Ava stared at him. The statement felt strangely familiar. It reminded her of lessons she had learned the hard way. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable. Eventually, Marcus laughed. "Listen to us. Two people sitting on a truck talking like philosophers." Ava laughed too. As darkness settled across the town, they continued talking. Family memories, childhood mistakes, dreams for the future. The conversation flowed effortlessly. At one point, Marcus told a story about accidentally locking himself inside his own garage overnight. Ava laughed so hard that tears filled her eyes. Watching her laugh seemed to make him happy. She noticed that. More importantly, she noticed how much she liked that. Over the following weeks, their friendship deepened. One afternoon, a sudden storm rolled through town while Ava was walking home from work. Before she could find shelter, Marcus appeared beside her truck. Without hesitation, he offered her a ride. By the time they reached her apartment building, rain was pounding the streets. Neither seemed eager to say goodbye. They sat inside the truck, listening to the storm. "You know something?" Marcus said quietly. Ava looked over. "What?" He smiled. "You make this town feel different." Her pulse quickened instantly. Neither looked away. Neither spoke. For a brief moment, the air between them seemed charged with something neither could ignore any longer. Then Marcus glanced away first and started the engine. The moment passed, but not completely. Because as Ava climbed the stairs to her apartment that night, she realized something she could no longer deny. She was no longer waiting to see Marcus. She was missing him whenever he was gone. By the beginning of the 4th month, Ava had stopped counting how many times she looked forward to seeing Marcus each week. The truth was simple now. What had started as friendship had quietly become something much deeper. Everyone seemed to notice except the two people living it. Denise smiled whenever Marcus walked into the market. Customers occasionally teased them. Even children from the neighborhood grinned whenever they appeared together. Yet neither Ava nor Marcus felt the need to define what existed between them. For the first time in a very long time, Ava felt genuinely happy. That happiness made the secret she carried feel heavier than ever. Every morning she promised herself she would tell Marcus the truth. Every evening she lost her courage. She imagined the look on his face when he discovered who she really was. She imagined the disappointment, the confusion, the possibility that everything they had built might disappear in an instant. One Saturday afternoon, the town hosted a summer street fair. Music filled the sidewalks. Food vendors lined the streets. Families gathered beneath colorful tents. Marcus and Ava spent the afternoon together, laughing and wandering through the crowded event. At one point, they sat beneath a large oak tree sharing lemonade. Marcus looked happier than she had ever seen him. "You know something," he said. Ava smiled. "What?" He looked at her for several seconds before answering. "Meeting you was the best thing that happened to me this year." Her heart nearly stopped. The words were simple, but they meant everything. For a moment, she almost told him the truth. Almost. Then her phone vibrated unexpectedly. Very few people had the number. Her stomach tightened immediately. The message came from one of the security agents assigned by her father. 3 words appeared on the screen. "We have a problem." Ava felt a chill run through her body. She discreetly opened the message. A photograph appeared. Her blood turned cold. The image showed her entering the market nearly 3 months earlier. Someone had taken the picture from a distance. Beneath it was another message. "Reporter, asking questions. More details soon." Ava tried to remain calm, but Marcus immediately noticed the change in her expression. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Just work stuff." The answer sounded weak, even to her own ears. Marcus studied her for a moment, but did not press further. Unfortunately, the situation was already moving beyond her control. 2 days later, everything exploded. A regional news website published an article featuring the same photograph. The headline spread across social media within hours. "Missing billionaire heiress Ava Brooks found living under assumed identity in small Illinois town." The story traveled faster than anyone expected. By lunchtime, it had been shared thousands of times. By evening, national media outlets were reporting it. Reporters began arriving in town. Television vans appeared near the market. Cameras lined the sidewalk. Inside the garage across town, Marcus stared silently at the article displayed on his phone. He read it once, then again, then a third time. Every sentence felt impossible to believe. The woman he trusted, the woman he cared about, the woman he thought he knew, was not who she claimed to be. And for the first time since meeting Ava, Marcus felt something far worse than confusion. He felt betrayed. The article changed everything overnight. By sunrise, reporters crowded the street outside the market. Cameras pointed toward the building where Ava lived. Questions followed her everywhere. Customers whispered when she walked past. Strangers stared. The quiet life she had carefully built disappeared in less than 24 hours. Yet none of that hurt as much as Marcus refusing to answer her calls. She tried once. No answer. Twice. No answer. 5 times. Nothing. Finally, unable to bear the silence any longer, Ava drove to the garage. The familiar building looked exactly the same. The only difference was the knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. Marcus was standing beside a vehicle when she arrived. For a brief moment, relief washed over her. Then he looked up. The expression on his face stopped her cold. He was not angry. Somehow, that felt worse. He looked disappointed. Deeply disappointed. Ava stepped closer. "Marcus, please let me explain." He set down the wrench in his hand. "Explain what?" His voice remained calm. "Which part should we start with?" Ava swallowed hard. "I wanted to tell you." Marcus laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "When?" She had no answer. Not because she did not care, because she genuinely did not know. Every day she had planned to tell him. Every day, fear stopped her. Marcus shook his head slowly. Do you know what bothers me? Ava looked at him silently. It is not the money. The statement surprised her. It is not the company. It is not the headlines. He looked directly into her eyes. It is that every conversation we had was built on something that was not true. Ava felt tears forming. I never lied about who I was inside. But you lied about everything else. The words landed harder than she expected, because part of her knew he was right. Marcus took a step back. I trusted you. His voice cracked slightly. Do you understand how rare that is for me? Ava nodded through tears. I know. No, he said quietly. I do not think you do. The silence that followed felt unbearable. Cars passed on the road behind them. A customer entered the garage. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. Ordinary sounds continued while Ava felt her entire world collapsing. Marcus, everything between us was real. He closed his eyes briefly. Maybe it was for you. That sentence shattered her. It was real for me, too. Marcus looked away toward the garage. I need time. Ava felt panic rising instantly. Please! Time, Ava. He spoke gently but firmly. I cannot do this right now. For several seconds, she stood frozen. Then she nodded slowly. There was nothing else she could say. Nothing else he was ready to hear. As she walked back toward her car, she realized she was experiencing a loss unlike any she had ever known. She had survived business scandals, public scrutiny, and heartbreak before. This felt different, because for the first time, she was not losing money, status, or reputation. She was losing the one person who had made her forget all of those things mattered. The following week felt longer than the previous 4 months combined. Ava returned to the market each day, but nothing felt the same. Reporters eventually left town, yet the silence Marcus left behind remained. She missed their conversations. She missed seeing his truck in the parking lot. Most of all, she missed the feeling of being understood. For the first time since returning to her public identity, Ava realized how little the fortune mattered. Billions of dollars could buy buildings, companies, and opportunities. But they couldn't buy back trust once it was broken. One evening, after another unsuccessful day of hoping Marcus might call, Ava made a decision. She was tired of hiding behind explanations and excuses. If there was any chance to save what they had, she needed to tell him the truth, face to face. Not as the heiress everyone knew, but as the woman he had met at the market. The next afternoon, she drove to the garage. No luxury vehicle, no assistants, no security standing nearby. Just Ava. Marcus was closing up for the day when he noticed her walking across the lot. For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt heavy with everything left unsaid. Finally, Ava stopped a few feet away. I am not here to convince you of anything, she said quietly. Marcus listened without interrupting. I'm here because you deserve the truth. He folded his arms, but remained silent. Ava took a deep breath. The day I met you, I was running away from a life that no longer felt real. Everyone knew my name before they knew me. Everyone knew my money before they knew my heart. I was tired of wondering whether anyone actually cared about the person underneath all of it. Marcus looked down briefly. Ava continued. Then I met you. Her voice trembled slightly. You never asked what I owned. You never cared about status. You asked whether I had eaten lunch. You helped people when nobody was watching. You treated me like I mattered before you knew anything about me. For the first time, Marcus looked directly at her. Ava felt tears forming but continued anyway. Everything important between us was real. Every laugh, every conversation, every moment. The only thing that was false was the part of my life I was trying to escape. Silence settled between them. Cars passed on the road in the distance. Somewhere, a radio played softly from a nearby building. Finally, Marcus spoke. Do you know what hurt the most? Ava nodded slowly. That I did not trust you with the truth, he exhaled. Yes. Neither moved. Neither looked away. After several seconds, Marcus shook his head and laughed softly. You know, this is probably the strangest story I have ever lived through. Ava laughed through her tears. I think I can agree with that. The tension eased slightly. Not completely, but enough. Marcus took a few steps closer. I cannot promise everything goes back to normal tomorrow. Ava nodded. I understand. And I'm still trying to figure out what all of this means. I understand that too. Another silence followed. This one felt different. Hopeful. Marcus smiled faintly. But I do know one thing. Ava waited. His eyes met hers. The woman I cared about was never the headline. A tear slipped down her cheek as she smiled. The future remained uncertain. Questions still needed answers. Trust would take time to rebuild. Yet as they stood together beneath the fading evening sky, neither seemed eager to walk away. And for the first time since the truth came out, that felt like enough. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to this channel.